Hey everybody, welcome back. Hit and Hustle live Wednesday night shows. We've been doing this for last past few weeks now. Jamie and Greg with you on Irish Sports Daily's YouTube channel. Gonna have a little fun today, Greg. I know it's something that we've kind of talked about. Before we were working together, before like off season time. It's a fun time to kind of like look at like bigger ideas, maybe some ways that you can change. I know obviously the coaching staff's looking into that, and it's our job to kind of look into it too. And one of the things that we talked about last week privately, and then I wrote about earlier this week too, was Notre Dame using 21 personnel and really two backs in general. And they were able to do that quite a bit last year, definitely more than they did the previous year. But we saw a lot of fun stuff from them this year when they did it.
Yeah, I mean, some of the best stuff. I mean, honestly, like going back over this was some of the most fun I've had over the off season. Just I don't think that during the year I kind of noticed how much Notre Dame was running out of 21 with two backs and different formations and that sort of thing. And I think it's probably because they're moving the running backs in and out of the backfield so often. They're doing motions and that sort of thing. So it's like when you have two backs in the backfield, it's really obvious. But when they put them out somewhere, when someone's going in motion, like you don't think of it as like a two back offense. But they did so many variations, so many fun things. Like you watch, it's like the aside from the actual play they ran, it's like so many things that they can do that it's like so many possibilities. So it's just like it's very exciting to think about, especially with Tyler Buchner. And obviously we went over his skill set on an earlier hit and hustle. So just kind of thinking about where the offense can go and just all the weapons that they have. It was a lot of fun looking over everything.
Yeah, and I think obviously having Kyren Williams, that was a huge benefit of that because he's a guy who can play in the slot, play receiver, run routes at like a very high level. Chris Tyree obviously has some of that too. I think Logan Diggs. I think people are going to see a lot more from him this year as a receiver. And that's the main thing, right? Is that you can run out of it, and we'll show some examples, obviously, of them running out of it. But it's really what it does is it forces teams to think that you're going to see a certain package, but they don't know exactly what they're going to get because you can be so multiple with it, and
Right.
they can work off so many different things, right?
Yeah, and so and not just that, but you can't really match up against anything, right? So if Notre Dame's having success running, well, you can't really load up against the run because there's so many other things they can do off of those runs. You're always creating a matchup problem for the defense and putting them in bad situations. So like you're going to end up with Mayer. If he's the tight end out there, he's going to be in a one-on-one situation. You're going to have Lorenzo Styles, Braden Lenzy. If you've motioned Chris Tyree out of the backfield and he has a mismatch on somebody, so it presents a lot of problems, and there's not a ton of solutions for the defense if Notre Dame is doing something specific. It's like if Notre Dame is having success running at them, well, what are they going to do? You have to bring in someone extra, but then that just opens up something somewhere else, and you'll see that when we show the clips here. There's so many things that are available to Notre Dame.
Yeah, and it's really, I think what I like about it the most is that it's kind of referencing what you said, is that you can focus. If you focus too much to say that, okay, well now they're two back, means okay, now they're going to highlight Kyren Williams as a receiver,
Right.
then you can get caught. You can
Right.
get really caught. You can get caught in a bad situation, and I mean that happened in the Virginia game. We'll go over some of those plays, but let's dive into the plays right now.
Yeah, I wanted to show this real quick from Matthew Thomas. Do you think they could have Tyree and Diggs on the field at the same time, similar to maybe three tight ends, mix it up all year with the Buchner run? Um, I you're gonna see like they did have Tyree and Diggs on the field at the same time,
Oh yeah,
so that's gonna happen a lot. So that's absolutely correct. Like so that's Matthew's on kind of like the right train of thought there. Like 21, you're highlighting all the things that Tyree and Diggs can do. So yeah, so let's go into the plays here.
All right, so this is Virginia Tech. I think most people remember this play. It was obviously, it ends up kind of like, spoiler alert, it's a Kyren Williams touchdown.
Right.
But really, the fun thing about this, and this was, I think Kyren talked about after the game, he said, hand it to me no matter what. Like,
Yeah, he told him, I want the ball. Yeah.
Yeah. And really, like, it probably wasn't the right read, as you'll kind of see, because everything else was wide open. But let's run it first, and then
we'll run it, and then I'll bring it back and break it down.
So give to Kyren. Obviously, he makes a ton. I mean, it did convert, so it wasn't like
it did work out for sure. Yeah.
It did convert, like, the first down on 3rd and 2. So all that, but you could just tell. You can even just tell by how Virginia Tech, like, their backers right now, they're like, what is this?
Right.
Because Notre Dame hadn't shown this prior to this. So they did not know what the heck was going on. Right. And so they see this kind of counter action with Diggs.
With
Diggs first. And obviously this was a game Tyree was out, I believe, because of
he had the turf
toe. Right. So Diggs got highlighted in this game, had a nice little game. And you can see how right here, I mean, it's obviously it's blocked up well up front, but once the give here, this is an RPO, right? Where so Buchner can pull here and he can run it, or he can dump it down to Diggs. And obviously there's more options too, but let's just run it again here.
Okay.
So look, if Buchner keeps here, like, this guy, he's already out leveraged. That you can see that end there is already out leveraged.
Yeah.
So, but even if he reacted there, he could just dump that down to Diggs, and that's a touchdown right there. And then you see at the top of the screen, you see the tight end. I believe that's Tackett.
It's Mitchell Evans. Actually.
It's Mitchell Evans. Sorry.
Yeah.
And Mitchell Evans, and I mean, he's going to be open here too. This is like, and then you have Austin coming across as well.
So he's Austin right here. He's running RPO action.
Yeah. And all this is, and at the time too, where the blockers aren't 3 yards down the field at the time too. So all of that is open up for them if you want to pull it and pass. And that's kind of like the beauty of all this, is that you run it, and it's a successful run and everything's good, and they block it well, and then Kyren, unbelievable individual effort. But look at all the other options open. And that's just when you have the two backs and the split backs there's just a million things you could do out of that, and this is one of them.
Right. And so, like, right here, like, so you get the counter action with Diggs here. So, like, Holyfield, he's lost as soon as he reacts to this. Yeah. So he jumps right. So now you have the double team. Right. So you have the double team with Madden and Patterson. That creates the leverage. Him moving this way creates the leverage for Madden to get there and seal them off. So, like, he's shoving the tackle. He gets there a little bit late, but as soon as he gets hands on him, it's going to be a first down, right? So it's a successful play, right? And like you pointed out here, he can go here. He can just run it. And honestly, he probably should just run it. So if he keeps it, you could flip it to Diggs, or you could just point to Diggs and say, hey, like, this guy's going to come up. You block him, and I'll just run for a touchdown, right? Like, Notre Dame has essentially, and you have Mitchell Evans here and the corners falling over. They have 3 touchdowns available to them. They can throw it to Diggs. He can run it himself. He can throw it to Evans, or he can give it to Kyren, and obviously Kyren can just score. So, and this is just like one play. It's one play. You can score a touchdown 4 different ways: running, passing. Yeah. Inside run, outside pass, deeper pass.
And this is later in the game. Or no, it's
earlier
in the game.
It was actually earlier.
Earlier in the game. This is, I believe, that 2-minute drill right before the half.
Yes.
Correct. And this is 20. So it's 2 backs, no tight ends.
Oh yeah.
No tight ends, right? Remember, this is the game Michael Mayer was out.
But this could easily be
that. It could have easily been Mayer, but that's Avery Davis there.
Yeah.
And then in the other slot, you have Kyren. So first of all, he's got options here. Like,
right. So he's gonna have Lenzy on the inside. he can throw it there. He can just run it too.
And anytime you're going to get Kyren Williams in a situation, and they're playing zone there, right? They're not playing man, and the corner really is supposed to sit there and wait on that out. But I mean, that's just a tough play for him, right? Like the corner's actually doing a half decent job of breaking on this. It's just that Austin does a good job of kind of forcing the issue, and then it's just out quick. The ball's out quick.
Right. Good timing.
And no chance. And no chance. And that's all. And that obviously you have a back in the backfield. So they look at it and they're like, early. So imagine later in the game too, when they see that split back look, they're thinking that, oh, it's going to be another kind of look where Kyren's coming out. And they're like, oh, we're not sure about it because you don't know what's going to happen. Right. And here they start out of that split back look, right? And this is 21 again.
Right.
You know, Mayer's back. He's in the slot. There's Deion Colsey on the outside there. Braden Lenzy to the right at the top of the screen. And Kyren is going in motion. They started split backs and they go in motion, right? So now they're stacked out there. And it's just a simple 3rd and 5. Notre Dame runs this so well on 3rd down. And that's one of the reasons they were really good at 3rd down is the stack release, right? And he is wide open here.
Yeah, so they bring this safety, and you know, it's basically you could say it's probably an option route here, so Kyren can go where he wants. This player, the corner, is sitting outside. The safety's in no man's land. He's not covering anybody, so it's just easy pitch and catch here.
And if that ball's on him, that's like probably a 20-yard game.
Yeah, he's running, and he's running for yards. And I want to point out too, like this is Jack Cohn, right? So you don't have to. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be
Buchner. Yeah.
So like people are going to ask about like Drew Pine, right? Can Drew Pine do these things? Absolutely, yes. Yeah. He can. First of all, he's a better runner than Cohn. Period. He's not as good as Buchner, but he is a good runner. But he can run this just as effectively with the options, because if you don't have the running piece of it from the quarterback, you still have all the other things. So any quarterback on the roster can do this stuff.
And I would argue that you could do some of the RPO stuff with him too. And not
for sure.
as frequently, obviously, because you don't want him to run it too much because he's not that big, but you could still do some of that.
Right.
So again, this is Virginia game. And I wrote about it in the piece that I did. Virginia game, they averaged like 12 yards per play when they ran 2 back, right? And they're mostly 20, or when they were exclusively, in 21 personnel.
Yeah.
So 2 backs, 1 tight end. And it was the most they ran it. They ran it like about over like 20% of the time in the game. And Virginia was just like completely off balance the whole time. And you're going to kind of see it here because they show that same kind of look that you get against Virginia Tech. And they run a reverse off of it with Lorenzo Styles, with Kyren Williams obviously leading the way.
And we saw this when we did the Lorenzo Styles hit and hustle too.
Yes.
It just kind of goes to show, and like I love the design of using the X. I guess he's the Z, but using that receiver to I'm sorry, the is he the X?
He is the X there.
Right, the X. I always get the boundary, like the X and the W, mixed up. Anyway, they use it on the line of scrimmage receiver to run the reverse, because usually you think of it, you're always thinking of the slot guy who's the one running a reverse, right? The guy who's off the line of scrimmage. But here Notre Dame, like Tommy Rees, disguises it to where he's on the line of scrimmage and they run the reverse with him, obviously to great success. But it's just kind of one of those things, like when they line up as a defender, you don't think of him as someone who actually could, like he's going to go get the ball here because, he's on the line of scrimmage, right? And they do it the same thing here with Braden Lenzy.
Yeah, and what I love about this one too, because it's so different than all the other ones we showed, where this time, because everyone's thinking, oh, Kyren Williams, he's the slot guy. He's the guy who goes out, right? Well, this time it's Tyree. And they have done this, obviously, with him. The one Toledo touchdown, he was going in motion as a slot, kind of like a wing back on that play. This one, he's just a straight slot, coming in motion, giving it to him on a jet sweep.
And you're
You think
thinking jet.
that's what you're thinking. But the
That's
whole, yeah,
that's their fast guy. That's their fast guy. They've got him in the slot. They like to run these things to the boundary. You're thinking jet straight away, and so he gets the ball, and that's why that you see such strong flow.
yeah.
Because you
Look
know,
at
like,
that
oh,
safety at
that's
the
good.
top. This is the perfect example,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Right there. And then obviously they give back to Lenzy. And Lenzy, this was probably the fastest he looked all year.
yeah.
Really, just hit it. He looked like, oh, yeah, forget that hamstring in the past because he really, really hit it. And I that reminded me a lot of 2019 Lenzy
Mhm,
of how he was like really just accelerating on those runs. And that's another thing too, right? You can use him as more of a weapon. I think that's the one thing that I would like to see Notre Dame kind of go back to a little bit more with Lenzy
mhm.
is use him in that running game. And then you could do so much out of that. And that's another thing out of 21. You're thinking about Kyren, you're thinking about Tyree, you're thinking about all these different things. And then boom, they hit you back with the reverse. They hit you back with another reverse with Lenzy. And listen, you have guys, you have speed, you have styles, you have Lenzy, you have these guys who can do this. And that's why it's like really, really fun. And obviously, that was the Virginia game too. You know, you get two really explosive plays just out of that. That the backs really aren't like primary guys in there; they're more like
Right,
decoys.
exactly. So this is the action with the that we saw from in the Virginia Tech game, except
Yeah,
this time he pulls it and throws it to Kyren. And
yeah.
that's what we would have seen. Obviously, this would have been a touchdown against Virginia Tech. But yeah, he pulls it out,
Yeah,
and
and he makes the right read here too because he sees that Kyron's
and
got
it's
him out
simple.
leverage.
It's just
Yeah,
a simple thing, right? And you probably even have the running back, like, but whatever you want, right? Like you can run it for 10, you can throw it for 10. I like they do this a lot where they so on this play, I didn't get it on the thing, but they shifted Mayer. He started over here and then shifted him over here and then brought Tyree across and they're going to bring him swing him back around. I really like when they do this and they create width here. So he's going to come through, he's going to shift back around. This is just straight pass. So you've got clear outs here and you've got Mayer coming across and look at all this room. If he wants to throw it to Tyree, look at all this space that's created because this linebacker here is looking towards Mayer, right? Because he
yeah.
knows he's coming across. They've cleared out this side because of the deeper routes. You've got a corner sitting right here, but look at all that space that Tyree has to kind of maneuver. Obviously, it's a good
I
throw
know.
by
I mean,
Buchner as well.
it's a great catch, right? But
Yeah,
like
it is.
that actually, he doesn't even actually need to throw that. Like that's the scary part is that yeah, he could have just checked that to Tyree, and that's still. I mean, that's going to be 10 yards easy, maybe 20, something like that. Like just because there's so much space there.
Yeah, and I want
There's
to highlight too the difference between like Tyler Buchner, right? Like he's a running quarterback and that sort of thing. But if you are a run first quarterback and that's what you
I
want
mean,
to do,
he's running through
you are
that.
not passing this up. Like
Yeah,
he wants to throw the ball and he wants to and he throws a ball that's like in tight space,
I
right?
feel like Ian Book might have ran that.
Ian Book is 100% running
Yeah,
this pass. Like that is the difference. Is like he will run this ball, he will see this, and he will go. There is nobody here, but Tyler wants to throw it. He
yeah,
wants to read out the play, and he wants to throw it to the right guy, and he ends up fitting one in, right? And obviously, maybe later you can in another spot, maybe he feels like he runs it, but in this situation, it's like no, I want to throw,
yeah,
and it's a long gain, right? It's like a
yeah.
25-yard pass.
And we should also mention too, that's also Diggs and Tyree again.
Yeah,
So that's not Kyren in
right.
there at that time too, right? So that's something that you could easily see this year.
All right. This play is straight up like triple option. Like
Yeah.
I love this play so much. And I was watching this on the treadmill the other day and I was like, "Oh, I found one that Jamie didn't find yet." So yeah, so you're going to give inside here to Tyree. Mayer's going to come kick out and they're going to option the linebacker here. And basically Kyron's coming around. They can run triple option off this. and you're going to have this linebacker run right past Tyree as he runs through. Runs right past him, right? So Tyler is
Yeah.
coming up here. You have Kyren off here who they can option, and it's just wide open space.
Yeah, and this is the first time that Tyree kind of looked healthy again, too, right? Was
Yeah,
in
and
this
he's,
game.
finally back. Yeah.
And I think like honestly too, and I know like there's like a lot of I find that there's as many people who want to give Tommy Rees credit for like, wow, he did a really good job with like converging two different offenses and all the different things that he did. There's a lot of people who probably didn't give him enough credit for like some of the some of the play design, like the variations and all this stuff,
Right.
like and the week to week stuff that they added in. I mean, and I'm not saying he's perfect, like he's the best offense coordinator in the country. Like he's 29 years old. He's
Mm,
obviously got, he's only had 2 years of experience being a play caller. He's obviously going to get better and better. You would expect based on what we've seen, but like just the variety of some of the stuff that they've done, and really kind of like using it because they don't have a Tommy Tremble right this
right.
year to kind of be
Yeah.
that battering ram, and the way he used Tommy Tremble with all in the run game was much different than what you kind of see here. And you obviously, Mayer's kind of doing what a Tremble would do in this place, but you don't see a lot of the plays we're showing aren't like featuring
Right.
Mayer
Right.
in that role.
Yeah. So he's basically a blocker here, right? So this would be Tommy Trumbull. Like he would do this specific thing. The thing with Rees, and I was thinking about this, like the clips that we're showing, this was all like the second half of the year, right? So
Yeah.
these aren't really like Virginia Tech on. And I was obviously when they showed, they had the, quote unquote weaker defenses. Um, and so he brought those things out. Like obviously this is Stanford, right? And the game's over. And it's obviously there's so many things that you can do with Buchner. Like this is a play that they ran earlier in the game with Cone that didn't really work. And it
Yeah.
didn't really work because you don't buy it,
Because
right?
you don't,
Because
yeah, you don't, there's no threat from Cone.
this linebacker isn't rushing to Cone. He doesn't care, but he does rush to Buchner. And that's kind of the difference where it's like Buchner runs it and the linebacker's like, "Oh, I'm going to go get him." Oh, he gave it
Yeah.
to the fast guy and now there he goes. So that's kind of the thing where I think if you have an entire spring running these things, you have an entire spring running it with this personnel. That's what is going to kind of make a big difference. And the other part of it too is I'll just let this run. This is where they shifted Mayer again, and this time they didn't keep him in line; they kept him outside. But so this is Tyree, this is Diggs. You're gonna see Tyree motion across and then come back here. So this is Lenzy. Next year, this will probably be Styles, right? So this, let's say it's Tyree and Diggs, and then you're gonna have Mayer. You're gonna have 1, 2, Styles 3, Lenzy 4, like all these guys. And obviously in this formation, like they're not gonna give the ball to Lenzy on a run, but all these guys can run the ball like behind the line of scrimmage. You give them a quick screen or something like that.
Yeah.
They can all do things
Avery
behind.
Davis, you'd throw in that category
Avery
too. Yeah.
Davis, correct. All these people you can do where it's like you don't have to they don't have to run like a perfect route or the coverage doesn't have to be just so. It's like we're just going to hand it to them.
Yeah, because they can make
And
a play. They can make a guy miss. They can break a tackle. They can do all those kind of things. And one of the other things too is you're kind of showing this too, and you look at it and you're like, well, it's Austin and Lenzy, and then so those are you only have to play two receivers. So
right,
everybody knows that Notre Dame's got a receiver problem in terms of numbers,
right.
right?
Not in terms of
Well,
talent, but in terms of numbers.
no, not in terms of talent, but in terms of numbers,
Right.
right? Well, if this takes away some of that problem if you
Right.
run this more. And I'm not saying that they're going to run 21 personnel like a lot, like it's going to be like anything close to a base offense. But if you told me they ran it like 15% of the time this year, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised because I think you could see that because one, that's going to take some of these receivers off the field so they don't have to play 75 snaps or whatever, right? And two, you got guys that all can make plays and can do different things. And then you're also stressing the defense, right?
Right.
And that's the main thing. The defense doesn't know what's coming.
Right. And it's like, so when you line up, you don't know how they're going to line up, but in the huddle or when the defense looks out there and they say, okay, they're in 21, they have two backs, two receivers, and then a tight end. Like you could run power with that. Like you could come inside and they could just run at them, right? You could have Michael Mayer in here with this formation and they could do a bunch of things and you can still run at the defense, especially when you consider that this is going to be Buchner. If this is Buchner, then they can run quarterback power. Like they can run at the defense with this and they can just as easily go 4 wide and you can stretch the field with it as well. And that's what makes it so so dangerous for the defense. It's like, yeah, like you see him line up and it's like, okay, you're gonna narrow the set of plays that they can run based on formation. But even when we're gonna see a play like this, like even then they have multiple options.
Yeah. And Astemi too, right? Audric Astemi, who we haven't mentioned yet, who can kind of be a fullback sometimes, when you're doing that. Right. And sorry, as we're just kind of getting there, but look at all that stuff they did with Tyree to get them to the point where they're running the screen to Diggs. And this is just obviously a great call and a great execution and everything. Terrific job by Diggs setting that up. And then Josh Lugg, very memorable big pancake on senior day, which was pretty nice.
And the thing is too, if you throw it, it's open. If this is a called play, right? So they're going to come back. But if he does throw it to Tyree right here, this guy's running off. He's not going to be a factor. Austin has this guy. And so now it's just Tyree racing the safety and this linebacker.
Yeah, and that's going to be a good game, maybe even a touchdown. Like
another thing Notre Dame could do is obviously, they blitz the corner so you get a little bit more pressure on Cone. But what they could do is they could flex out Diggs here, fake it to him, and bring Mayer inside, and they could run tight end middle screen right here. So it's like one play. You're not trying to throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage, and it's an explosive play opportunity.
Yeah, great design there. This is from early in the season.
This is Toledo, yeah.
This is Toledo, and I believe it started out as split backs.
Yeah, it did. So Kyren was here, and then they motioned him here.
Yeah, and they motioned him here, and then you're thinking, if you're Toledo, you're thinking 3-2. They motioned Kyren out here. This is probably going to be some kind of like pick play, some kind of thing that's going to get Kyren Williams open, and then they're going to convert it that way, right?
And it kind of is.
It kind of is, really, right?
And they play it like that.
Yeah, and it's essentially, yeah, they could have ran it, but look at all the guys flowing here, thinking that's there, right? And that really kind of opens it up, obviously, for the inside there. So that's the kind of thing that can do too. But really, you have both kind of options where this is what makes it so hard to defend, because you're like, oh, well, they got to be going to Kyren here, and then they run it inside. But then you're thinking, okay, well, they're going to run it inside. Like, it's obviously 3-2, but then you have Kyren there too, right? And, whether or not you decide to make that like an RPO call, or if that's just like a called play that you want to mix in, whatever, right? There's just a lot of different things you can do with it. And that's the beauty of it all, is that there's just like these little tweaks that you can do to each different play out of this and just change it. And that's why it's just like, I find it the most fun stuff that they did last year to me on offense was out of 21.
Right. And what you can do too and this is where like Notre Dame ran, it's like an RPO basically with a screen. Like a nitpick thing for me. I don't like that Kyren turned his back to the line of scrimmage. Just shuffle sideways, because when you turn your back, it's like, am I going to throw it?
Yeah, it should have been more like bubbled out the way
Yeah, just like shuffle while you're always facing forward so that it can lead you forward. Anyway, but you're doing that, right? They ended up running inside zone with the with a tag option off of it, right? Like imagine if this is Buchner for one, he'll just keep it and he can do this.
Yeah.
Or if they crash on him, then he'll throw it out to Kyren. But what you can do still is you can just run like a standard explosive, like an explosive play off this, right? You could do play action. You're blocking with 6. You can run levels, right? So you can run Mayer on a dig. You can run Lenzy on a post. You can run Kyren on a little angle route or like a little option route right here underneath. You can run Austin on a go. Like you can run scissors concept where it's like, Mayer goes to the corner and Austin goes to the post. You have so many different things. Like you can attack them vertically. You can attack them horizontally with the screen here. You can run at them. You can run RPO. Like the defense, it's hard to call a defense against something like this because there are so many different things they can do. I mean, think of it like they can run sweep with Kyren. They can run sweep with Lenzy. They can run reverses. There's so many different options.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it difficult to A, scheme against, and B, to kind of make an aggressive defensive call because they can catch us.
Yeah.
With these types of guys on the field, like you can get caught. So what you're going to do is you're going to be, they're in man and they're vulnerable to a lot of things. Like Notre Dame probably chose the least good option on this one, and it was still a successful play. Like they still got the first down.
And
So
I would say that one
to show.
thing that I thought of when Chip Long was offense coordinator, and I thought he was fantastic at like, getting like shot plays in terms of like designing things that like influence block people and all of a sudden hit for a big play. Like he was great and knowing when to hit that, and he was great at that.
Yeah.
But I thought there was a lot of stuff he did formationally that was predictable. I was like, oh, I mean, they got trips to the field here. I mean, it's all slants right now,
Yeah.
like because
Yeah.
he did that a lot, right? And it was just too predictable, right? It was too predictable, and especially when I was like 3rd and 6, I was like, I mean, everyone and their mother knows this is coming, right? Like that's what happened, and I think the one thing with Tommy Rees that I think that I've noticed the most is that they just really become unpredictable because what they show you one week is something that they tweak for 3 weeks later. That's different.
Yeah.
And so if I'm a player on defense and I'm watching film and I'm thinking like, oh, when they run, tight bunch to this side and, with the tight end attaches, I'm thinking, oh, this is like inside zone, whatever. Like just say whatever. And you get like a scouting report that tells you 98% of the, or whatever the percent of the time, this is what happens. But then you get to it and you're like, wait, they didn't run that at all. They ran some other kind of variation on it. And especially when you're adding in the RPO stuff, that just makes it like it's impossible. Like it's so hard to play defense, so hard to coach defense when teams are doing this.
Yeah. Let's put up a kind of a question, a comment from David Solomon. By the way, David, thank you. You're always joining us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, David.
I've been saying Buchner needs to beef up, gain weight by the start of the season. Ideally 220 to 225. How do you all see him where his weight is concerned? He's about 210 now.
I don't think so. I don't see it as that. Like if he gains it naturally, like and it's just gonna get older. Obviously, he's young. He's a freshman last year. If all of a sudden he's 225 next year, I think that's fine. I don't think he needs to make a conscious effort to do that. I don't think you want to take away any of his quickness, and that's the main important thing I think there, because I think one of the reasons he was so successful, he averaged 7.3 yards per carry, which is pretty ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
It was the highest of any quarterback last year. A lot of it is because he could like beat a guy to the corner, which you're like not really expecting for a quarterback that you see that. So he beat like a lot of linebackers corner. He made guys miss. Like there's that one run against, I recently rewatched the Virginia Tech game because I was looking at a whole bunch of Buchner stuff. And man, he just broke Dax Holyfield's ankles on this
Yeah.
one. Like
Oh
this,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, that is the kind of thing where I don't want him to lose that. So as long as he keeps that, and if he gains the weight, fine. But I don't think he needs to beef up in terms of like he needs to hold up in terms of like running the ball or whatever. I would just say if it becomes a concern, then that's when you tell him like, okay, well you got to slide more or you got to do this more or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather do that and him keep his quickness than him being a guy like I mean I would just try to tell him like chill on the trying to truck guys, even though I mean it's fun when you see your quarterback truck a guy, but you don't want to see it too much because you don't want to see him you want to have that be in a bad situation where all of a sudden, he's got a separated shoulder or something like that.
Yeah, and David, if you're still here, I'm curious if you've been to a game this last season and if you saw Buchner live, or like if you went to the player walk. Like I went to the USC game, and we were kind of standing around for the player walk and watch everyone walk by. And when I saw him, I thought, wow, he looks a lot more sturdy than I would have thought. Right. Like it kind of just jumped out to me like, wow, he looks pretty thick. Like he's pretty well
Yeah.
built. And that kind of like, I was heartened by that, because I think for David, like I have a similar concern about, like, man, we talk a lot about how much they're going to run him and do all those things. And it's like, he needs to hold up, like he needs to, he needs to last the whole season, and he didn't last the whole season last year in limited reps. Obviously, he's going to get stronger at least. Weight wise is kind of a different thing, but I could see him getting to 220. Anything above that would make me nervous from a like a soft tissue issue, because like he pulled a hamstring, or he tweaked a hamstring or something this year.
Yeah, against Purdue.
And what you don't want, and I was afraid of this with Lenzy too, by the way, is you don't want a guy who isn't naturally thicker or bigger carrying a bunch of weight. You don't want someone like that putting on a bunch and then having them run around, because if your body isn't built for it, then your body isn't built for it. And we need him to be quick. We need him to be fast. Like the last thing you want.
He's going to gain weight because he's like 18, 19 years old. So he's going to gain weight. But I don't think he needs to be, they don't need to get him like, man, hammer those protein shakes, man, because you need to get to.
I don't want them to have a number.
Yeah.
Like get him stronger, right? Get him stronger and get him functional to where it's like, okay, we feel good about this and he feels good about this. I'll put up a comment from Nick Henriksen where he said, he stood next to Buchner at the team hotel right before Purdue, 6'1" and thick. Like I was impressed. I was impressed.
He's built more like a running back.
Yeah, I think the concern might be just from like he's going to take a lot of shots, but I don't want him to get too big, because I think that'll take some effectiveness.
The other thing is, and you've noticed this too with a lot of other quarterbacks who run a lot in college football, is that I don't think, it's like a game by game thing in terms of how much you run them. So it's like Notre Dame's going to play Ohio State to start the season. That might be a game where it's like, I mean, we got to do anything we can to win this game. You do
what you got to do.
I mean, he might run it 15, 16 times in that game. But they're playing UMass. Marshall. Yeah, UMass or not Marshall. I was just picking somebody out of there. But Marshall, they're playing Marshall this year. UNLV or whatever, right? Like, you want to ease it up, try to get like as few of those situations as possible, and I think that's what you saw. Like, I mean, Deshaun Watson's the best at that, annoying, being like, well, I mean, this is a big game. I better run. I better run more.
I mean, we saw that from Trevor Lawrence too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Let's put up another question from Dark Moon Blade. Do you see Notre Dame moving in a spread option direction on offense?
I mean, that's kind of like what Buchner, kind of like what we kind of talked about in terms of like this kind of like the spread option RPO stuff. That's like kind of like going to be the base, I think, of the running game, really, um, because there's so many counters off of it,
Yeah.
right? That you can do. And I mean, we showed the stuff with the wide receiver run stuff too, right? So um, I think that's like what you want to do. I don't think I just don't see them like being in a situation, or and they haven't really been like this even with Jack Cohn too. I don't see them being in a situation where he's lining up under center very often and they're doing much of that. Like they're gonna run, I think, they'll run inside zone, they'll run duo, they'll still run some of that stuff, but like I think they're gonna run a lot more outside zone this year. I think they're gonna do a lot more variations on that quarterback run game. I imagine they'll run like speed option is something that you didn't see a lot. I think you'll see that a little bit more this year. So that kind of stuff. But a lot of it will be RPO based, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just because it puts defenders in such a, it's like the whole defense, it really stresses you out. And, for someone who's been in when I was playing, we played a team, it was like the first time I ever saw a spread. And it was like the worst experience of my entire life, just because you just never know. You can never have a good idea of what they're going to do. And anytime you can have a defense feeling like that, that's what you want. So that's what I would do. And I think that's the direction they're going to go. It takes advantage of all of their best qualities in terms of personnel and skill sets. So let's go to Daniel Gullifer. I'll say Gullifer. Hope I got it right. If you had to guess, what will the starting O-line look like? Alt, Kristofic, Patterson, Lugg, Fisher. Is that what you think it should look like?
I don't know if it should look like. I think that's probably, you'd say that's what they're probably going to come out in for the beginning of spring. I think a lot depends on if Lugg, how well he can play at guard. Um, I don't think he played very well at guard before. Um, so in that short time that he had to play guard. So that to me is a bit of a question mark. I think obviously Blake Fisher's an upgrade on him on tackle.
Mhm.
So, I mean, to me, a lot depends. Like, it's weird because Lugg's coming back. I mean, you value his experience and some of the stuff he can do, but he still is the same guy where there are athletic limitations to him. And I don't know. I mean, it's weird because he's a 6-year guy, but like, I think he's got kind of the most to prove because he'll be probably playing a new position. Um, you expect that guys like a Rocco Spindler can make a jump under Harry Heastand and make a jump after he's had this time in the program, strength conditioning and all that. Where are all these other guys going to be at? Where is like, Michael Carmody going to be at? Tosh Baker, right? Those are two guys I'm actually writing about in Six Thoughts because those guys are not projected to be starters, and I don't think they'll be starters. But at the same time, I think those guys came in when it was the COVID beginning of COVID, so pandemic year,
Yeah.
and they didn't really have like a full year to like develop, especially at the most critical position when it comes to physical development and technical development. So they kind of like last year was kind of like year 1.5 for them
Yeah.
instead of like year 2. So and then they were kind of forced to play probably earlier than expected. And then it just so happens that like, you got Fisher and Alt there who are like above expectations and like playing early. So I really want to see where those guys are at because the way that I'm putting it in Six Odds is that under Harry Heastand, guys like sink or swim, right? And like Tosh Baker, to me specifically, like he's a guy who could be like an NFL guy and really like swim and go far. But I mean, he might just sink. I don't know, right? I have to see how he reacts to it. So, but
Yeah.
those guys are like intriguing to me because I don't think either of them, I wouldn't pencil them in as starters, but I want to see like, I think they could still be like long term players for Notre Dame. So, I don't know. I think O line's going to be really interesting because obviously you got 4 starters back, 5 if you include Blake in there too. Um, And I just think it's just going to be really interesting to kind of see what they do. If Kristofic's going to stay on the left side there, because I think Rocco's only played the left side pretty much all of high school, so he's kind of like used to that.
Mhm.
Kerry Heastand's known for kind of developing guys both sides, and I think that's important too, especially like you want to play in the NFL, man. You want to be able to
Right.
work both sides, especially if you're a guard, right? So um that's one of the reasons why like all those guys have had so much success because like they could play right tackle, left tackle. Zach Martin goes from left tackle to playing right guard. Not too many guys can do that, right? And make that transition and be an all pro in their first year. So to me, it's going to be really interesting what happens there. I would say that is probably how I think it's going to look to start, but I don't know. I'll be interested to kind of see if that's how it kind of turns out by the time they get to September.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly where. Like, I know we saw Josh Lugg today in the video that Notre Dame posted where he was working out,
Yeah, I was pulling like
pulling the thing. I
yeah.
don't know where he is as far as his knee. Um, what that situation is, and if he cedes a bunch of reps to Rocco because Rocco's ready to like.
Yeah.
I want to say I don't want to say like ready like I know he's ready good to take over, but just in his mind he's got to be saying, okay,
He's looking at it as this is going to be my spot.
I
Yeah.
came in with Fisher. It's my time, and I need to like this is I'm going to make headway with this new coach and everything, and and hopefully he's getting his weight up and that sort of thing, and that's probably going to be a big key for him. I think Zeke Correll has kind of people forget about him. Like he was going to be the future at center, and now he's like, where does he fit?
Yeah.
So and you mentioned Baker and you mentioned Carmody too. Like those guys, I thought Carmody looked good last spring, and I thought he was okay against Florida State, and then he hurt the ankle, and then
And then he wasn't really,
really set him back,
yeah.
right? And you get the high ankle, like that's a killer, right? Um, so like you said, where does that kind of shake out? So to ask like, who do I think it will be? Like I think right now it's most likely Daniel, the 5 that you put up is probably most likely just because you have to think the experience that Kristofic gained. He was a good player anyway. So you have to think that'll make a big difference. As far as should, we don't know that yet. Right? We have to. There's so much that has to adjudicate itself. The question of should is way premature for us to answer, but it is a good question, and everyone's kind of always thinking about that. Well, man, I'm gonna say Jay Jones. I don't know how to pronounce the
It's
first. If you want,
Jughead, man. It's Jughead.
oh, is that what that is?
That's what he's trying to be, Jughead.
All right,
Yeah.
Jughead Jones. Okay. How soon often do you guys think we'll see Snead? What kind of impact are we expecting?
I mean, I really have no idea until you kind of see what's going on with him in the spring. And then even then, he might not do anything in the spring. And then summer might be the time that he kind of makes a jump. I mean, it certainly helps him to be on campus now. I think he's, seems pretty confident. I think that's a good sign. No doubt he's fast. I mean, he's only weighs like 200 pounds right now. So, I mean, people were like on Jeremiah Wosu Koromoa for being small, and he was heavier than that when
Like
he played.
215.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to play Rover. I mean, Cincinnati played the sniper was their version of Rover. They had a guy who was 190 pounds playing that. So, it's not out of the question that he could play early. But physically, like athletically, I think he's going to be like, if not the most talented guy on out there, like right up there, right? The question is, what are they going to do? So, like, if Jack Kaiser stays at Rover, well, I mean, Snead's not going to start over him at Rover, right? Like, at least not right away. So, and if they move Kaiser inside, what does that mean? Like, because basically that would mean you're going to play somebody young at Rover, right? Or
Yeah.
like we talked about, maybe moving X Watts to Rover or something like that.
Or Patelho. He was
yeah,
out there before.
yeah, right. So I guess it just depends what they do with some of the other guys there. But I mean, he's ultra talented. I mean, he'll play this year. I imagine. He's not going to redshirt. I don't think he's going to be a massive factor this year, but I think we'll probably see enough flashes from him where you're like, oh man, this guy's going to be something.
Yeah, like I'm trying to think like Jalen is kind of a tough in terms of playing time. It's kind of tough because he was a starter because Danny Spahn got hurt.
Yeah.
They probably would have had a timeshare if Spahn was healthy. So, I don't know if Jalen is going to have like a situation where it's like his snaps are guaranteed, right? Jalen, they probably would have been like on an every other series um kind of situation, at least to start the year. And then Jalen, I mean, it's hard to imagine Jalen wouldn't have just taken most of the snaps by the end, but I don't see Snead being in that position. And a lot of this too, like it has to like Jack Kaiser has some say in it.
Oh,
I
definitely.
think Botelho probably has some say in it too. Like those guys are looking to be ascending players this year. So it's not solely up to Jalen Snead. And I don't know from a physical standpoint if he's ready enough to say, like, I'm taking it away from you rather than being good enough to say, like, I deserve to get some run. And I think that's probably most likely, which like he's going to show himself to be good enough in practice to where it's like, I need to get on the field somewhere, but I'm not going to completely take away your positions. Basically, that's how
Yeah.
kind of I see it.
I mean, I will say if Snead plays a lot this year, I don't think that'll be a bad sign. I think that'll be a sign of like, oh, this guy's going to be great.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah. Yeah. If he
Yeah.
plays a lot, then we're on to something.
Yeah.
So let's get another one from Nick Hendrickson. Would you be more surprised if Lug didn't start or Christophic didn't start?
Christophic, I would be more surprised. With Lug, just because, like I said, he's going to be playing position, it's switching positions. We all assume he's going to be trying to compete at right guard. So there's that change for him. I think with Christophic, I think there's still a lot better he can get. There's like, I don't think he's close to reaching a ceiling. I think Lug is a lot closer to reaching a ceiling if he hasn't reached it already. So there's that. And I think Lug has been hurt a lot.
Yeah.
He's been a guy, and he's battled through injuries too. Like to his credit, he's totally battled through injuries. But and that might be the kind of situation where last year they were like, well, I mean, you got to battle through, man, because we don't got anybody else. Where this year they might be in a better position where they say, nah, like if you're not 100, you might not be good enough to start, right? So
Yeah.
that's something I think would be the main thing to watch with him.
Yeah. And I think just generally, like the conversation is always about like Lug competing with Spindler, right? And even when he came back, it was like his spot isn't guaranteed, you know? It's like no one says that about Christophic, So I feel like they kind of sense like, okay, we got something with Christophic. We're going to build off of this. Lug can compete for that guard spot,
Yeah.
and that just seems to be the way it's spoken about. So, so then, I would be more surprised if it was.
I mean,
If
I
it
would
was
be surprised, but I mean, who knows? Like, I mean, maybe it's just something where, like, obviously they're gonna made a coaching change there. Harry he stands back, so
yeah, like
we'll
I don't think
see.
it's impossible. Like I'm
No,
not. Yeah, like I'm just saying like the levels of surprise. Like I wouldn't be like
I would be more
surprised by
surprised.
at all, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, like if Lug starts, I won't be like shocked. It's just like between the two of them, I
yeah,
would be more surprised if it was Christophic who didn't start.
yeah.
So,
I agree.
all
All
right, I
right,
think that's all the questions.
that's it. Okay, all right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope everybody enjoyed our like nerdy talk about 21 personnel and two backs, and I think I mean, I'm excited to kind of see if Notre Dame kind of shows a lot of that in the spring. I don't even know if they're going to show any of it really in the spring, or if that's going to be something we see this fall. I'm sure we're going to see a decent amount of it this fall, though.
Yeah,
And I'm excited to see what Tommy Rees is going to go into the lab and figure out some more stuff there. And I'm sure going to see more variations with it with Tyler Buchner as well. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see if Preston Zinner is going to commit somewhere on Friday. If he's Irish, then maybe you can expect a video from us. We'll see. So
all right.
thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time.